hey, it's not a cost, it's not a doom and gloom, sustainability, climate change, all that stuff. It's actually a business opportunity. And by the way, you're not exploiting it properly. This is how you should do it. But you've got to do your backyard first. You've got to make sure it's not greenwash. You've got to make sure it's robust and you have a good platform to stand up. And then how can you influence other customers and win more business through it? That's really what I do.
Hello and welcome to the Regenerative Design Podcast. I'm your host, Mathieu Mehuis, and in this show, I interview the leading authorities in the world of regenerative practices, people who do good and do well. Are you a person that cares about your environment and our planet? Are you a person that wants to leave the planet to our children to be something that we can be truly proud of? Something to enjoy for many generations to come. But are you also a person that believes we can do all of this and do good in business? Well, I have really good news for you. You're here listening to the podcast that is all about making our planet a better place and making your business more successful. Enjoy the show. All right, welcome to another episode of the Regenerative Design Podcast. Today we have another amazing guest. His name is Lee Stewart. Lee Stewart is a best-selling author of the book How to Build Sustainability into Your Business Strategy. He has over 20 years of experience in the corporate world. He's an ESG specialist, and he helps all kinds of businesses to integrate sustainability in their business. He has an amazing track record of achievements over the past 20 years. So he's been in sustainability for a while. So welcome to the show, Lee. It's such an honor to have you here, and I'm excited to talk about your work.
Oh yeah, me too. So thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, awesome. So Lee is dialing in all the way from Australia. I've had a couple of people on from Australia. We had an amazing architect from a company called Breed Architecture. They're doing like amazing work to do sustainable architecture. You might have heard of them. But today I want to talk about you. So tell me, where did everything start? What's your backstory?
Yeah, the backstory. How far do I go back? But I was very fortunate enough to grow up and have my early childhood in New Zealand. So not far from Australia, wow. A few hours drive. And appreciation of the outdoors comes living in sort of country, rural towns, and then sort of many smaller cities, but never more than 10 minutes away from a beach or a mountain or a river. And part of growing up in school was outdoor education. We call it tramping. So you put your backpack on, you go in the bush for a few days and stay in huts or tents and stuff, and just loved it.
That's part of the school in New Zealand?
Yeah,
part
you
of
have
the education
outdoor,
there?
Outdoor education for at least 1 or 2 weeks a year.
That's amazing.
Some kids melt down, it's pretty rough on some of them, but I just thrived it. I loved it. I just, and part of, when I was at university, I joined a tramping club and the reserves in the army, just running outside, outdoors, seeing nature, being part of nature, was always at your doorstep, and you didn't really appreciate it until I left New Zealand and go, oh wow, I've got to drive 4 or 5 hours to see that, when I could have actually got on my bike in New Zealand almost and pedaled around and seen it, So
right.
That sort of early indoctrinated me into, what's really right about nature. And then there was a couple of things in New Zealand as a kid was growing up, which really resonated with me. Was New Zealand still nuclear free, and the protests around nuclear free, and a big treaty where we stopped the American warships coming in, even though they're nuclear powered or couldn't give us guarantees whether they carry nuclear weapons. So, and I remember as a kid protesting in the streets for that. And that was something that really resonated with me in the early 80s when I was, 7 or 8 or 9, doing that. And then also the stance on whaling as well for New Zealand. And then, and another thing to throw in the mix, anti-apartheid with the Māori rugby tours and stuff with South Africa. So you had this sort of melting pot in the sort of 80s, early 80s of me being exposed to all these world issues and going, hey man, there's got to be a better way to do stuff. And it really sort of helped formulate me. You look back on those years and are still immensely proud of what it means to be a New Zealander, that we made the stand and we've done those things, and that still resonates today till that day, New Zealand's nuclear free, amongst all the pressure of everything else still stands out. So that was sort of really formed me. And, but like most Kiwis, you want to travel. We have so when you get after university, you work a couple of years, and then I was fortunate enough to get a job transfer to Sydney, and in time for the Sydney Olympics in 2000, which was just an amazing experience. And
Well,
really,
so you worked with the Olympics in
oh no,
2000?
I just came here with
Or
a
you
job
just
just at the time the Olympics was happening, so that was so
okay.
fortunate. And then yeah, and then worked in finance early stages and telcos, but was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to use my career for good and do startups. I did IT tech startups around clean tech and online education around sustainability in the early 2000s. That what really got me on the path of, yes, there's a way to make money, but also help do good at the same time. Sort of leaning back to, I'd love to be an activist, but it doesn't pay,
Oh
all
yeah.
that sort of stuff, all those things. And it's kind of like, how do I be that person in business? And I'm pro business. I love working in business. How can I merge the business and good together? And that's where I sort of found sustainability. So yeah,
Yeah, I think that's an amazing perspective to look at. Like, partly, yes, okay, when you're an activist, I think activists are great. They should keep
yeah,
doing it. It's an important part
yeah,
of the work.
yeah,
But like you said, it doesn't pay the bills, and sometimes, often, it gets so much into a negative energy about like,
yeah,
oh, this is bad and this is wrong, and we
yeah,
shouldn't do this. And there's like, okay, guys, let's take a
yeah,
step back and see what the
yeah,
opportunities are here.
yep.
So was that something similar for you that was aligned?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I thought also when you look at companies, what if I could do that from the inside?
Mm.
And it's not as fast. Obviously, you don't go straight in there with your placard into a boardroom. You got to
No.
build up political capital. You got to build up know-how and be known as that trusted person. But what if I could do that from the inside of a company and help do that?
Infiltrate.
Well, do good. Yeah, it's not infiltrate, but also why do I? And very early on, because I had a sales background as well, how do I use that as an advantage for the company to actually
Oh
be
yeah, exactly.
profitable more? And that's where the genesis really came for the book as well. So it's really, how do you sort of change the thinking? Hey, it's not a cost, it's not a doom and gloom, sustainability, climate change, all that stuff. It's actually a business opportunity. And by
Nice.
the way, you're not exploiting it properly. This is how you should do it. But you've got to do your backyard first. You've got to make sure it's not greenwash or it's not all that crap that's involved with it. You got to make sure it's robust and you have a good platform to stand up, and then how can you influence other customers and win more business through it? That's really what I do.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's such an important work. Again, back to like, okay, how can we do good in business? Yes. And how can we do good for the environment? There's like two separate things.
Yeah,
But then if you start bringing them together,
yeah,
they end up getting benefits in all
yeah,
directions. Like when you really
exactly.
look at it
Yeah,
holistically.
yeah,
So
correct.
let's talk more about your award-winning book, or your
Yeah,
best-selling book, excuse me.
yeah, yeah,
So how did that come about, and what's it all about?
yeah. Well, it came about of sheer frustration. I just finished up in probably my largest corporate role in New Zealand, and quite frankly, I was burnt out. I was just pushing a hard agenda, and it got too hard, and then I was done. Finally, I'd pushed that to that point. So there I
What
was.
kind of company was it, if I may ask, and
It
what
was
were
yeah,
you
it
doing
was
there?
it was it was Fonterra, the largest company in New Zealand, dairy industry. So
Okay,
huge company owned by 10,000 farmers, a cooperative that had large milk processing plants, exporting. Um, God, it was responsible for 25% of dairy exports.
what? Wow.
Quite significant, right? So big significant company. I was head of sustainability there. I was headhunted for the role from Sydney. I moved my family back to New Zealand for 4 years during a
Wow.
lovely COVID and MIQ and hotels and all that stuff,
Nice.
quarantine. But yeah, I just through a series of other circumstances, you know, I was done. Gave it
Yeah,
almost three
pushing
years.
too hard. And
Yeah, it was tough. It was the toughest gig ever done, and it was a hard environment, but huge opportunities.
farming is difficult, man.
Yeah,
And my
yeah,
father and brother are farmers. It's
yeah.
one of the toughest business in the
It's
world, I
hard,
would
and
say.
I feel for everyone in farming. They've got a lot coming at them, and yeah, I was doing my best. Um, but so there I was, handing my pass back and my laptop back to my boss and going, oh shit, what do I do now? What do I do? I've just gone, moved my family over. Got and I've got a bit of breathing space before I need to find something else. So I said, look, I've got to go out on my own. I don't think I can do a large corporate role straight away. I need to go and help other businesses, but some various. So I was fortunate enough to pick up a couple of good contracts with people I knew, but then I had the spare time, I had the space, and I said, I've got to write that book. And I've been thinking about it for a while, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. I know you've written a book yourself, but I'm not a natural writer. I was hideous. I was really bad at it. But my saving grace was that I told all my friends I'm writing a book.
Oh, yeah.
And then every time I'd see them, sometimes I'd hide at a party or something. I go, I don't want to talk to you because you're going to ask me and I haven't done anything. But they kept me accountable, and it wasn't till last winter in New Zealand. It wasn't that pleasant. But from the hours of 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. when the kids had gone to bed, I just sat down. I said, I've just got to write. And I smashed out the rough draft.
Nice.
I ate copious amounts of junk food and whatever to get me through. A couple of bottles of wine, a few beers every now and then. But it was that sort of really 3 months. It was 4 months of just going into
did it in 3 months?
Oh, no, just the rough draft. But then the editing's a whole different story. But it was just going into your man cave and just saying, I have to do this.
Nice.
So
I love the dedication, and I think it's I heard about it in another podcast, like a very successful business owner who was like transforming business and doing it in sectors that everybody said it's impossible to do anything in that sector. It's been like that forever. You can't change it.
Yeah.
And he's disrupting all these industries. And he said, my best technique of like getting into it is like, just like you said, it's like when I'm going for it, I tell all my friends about it. I ask them to invest in my company. I put everything at stake that I won't lose my face to fail. And that's quite interesting when you tell people like, I'm going to do this. It's like, you better well do it. Otherwise your friends are like, hey, have you finished your book yet?
What are you doing?
So that's a great way. It's a great strategy, I think.
Yeah. And it was one hell of a party when I launched the book. So that was pretty cool. So I had that in mind, that launch party. Yeah.
Epic. So that was actually synthesis of all of your experience, or you crafted more of like what you want?
It was really, and it was also, as I was working with some of the clients I work with, this whole subject was new to them. For the first time, what do I mean sustainability? What is climate change? What is modern slavery? What is coral bleaching and the garbage patch in the Pacific mean for my business? What's that relevant? So as they were grappling with these issues and I was working with them and helping craft this strategy, I said, oh, really? They need to know they need to know something around the global status, like the macro issues. So, and I realized I broke it down into, first of all, they need to be confident. They need to know what climate change means to their business. What is a carbon? Basics of modern slavery. And I gloss over it at a very high level. So the first part of the book is about confidence, and it's really about these global macro issues, what it means and why it's relevant to your business. Okay? So that's the sort of foundation, because when sometimes I've jumped to a boardroom saying, hey, we've got to set a climate target. This is what we've got to do. And I think it's just normal. And the board's going, hold on, what is a carbon? What is that? They're not confident in the subject. So you can't jump to that if they're asking them to sign off on something. They don't really know what it is. So
a large part of your work and in your book is like problem statement. What's it? Why is it important?
Look, and what is, that's confidence. That was the main bit that I really tried to nail very quickly and I don't cover it all. I gloss over it, and I recommend people go and do some more reading and stuff, because the goal of the book was to say as much as possible with as little as words as possible, to value business leaders' time. So that's confidence. And then I thought the second part I'm working with clients, always working with clients, is what is your commitments? What are you going to stand for? You've suddenly been thrown up, you have to set a climate target because your customers want one, or your bank says you need to get one. What does it all mean? So what do you have to actually commit to? And how are you going to go about doing that? And how do you focus on what matters most to your business? Because I see a lot of businesses where it might be the pet project of the CEO or the chair to support this charity, and it's got absolutely nothing to do with the business. But it's a great charity. It might be, Children's Hospital and all that other stuff. It's great, but it's not relevant. So, and they think that's their social side of things. And so making sure you focus on what matters the most, that's being, and what you stand for is a commitment side. And in a final part where not everyone, a lot of companies let themselves down, is they don't keep it consistent. They don't have a governance model. They come out with a big fanfare, big marketing brochures, a big sustainability report with targets, and then the next year they go, oh yeah, we haven't got an update, or we're scrambling for an update because they haven't done anything. They haven't got the governance model in place, so they haven't kept it consistent. So
it's like they often think like it's this
yeah.
external thing, like a checkbox.
Yep. Or
For our image, we have to do something for the environment. So we'll hire somebody to do something.
Correct.
We'll make a strategy, and then at the end of the year, it's like, we didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, we got a report on this. Where's it ready? You know, and the poor sustainability person's probably been under-resourced, hasn't had the chance to do it. It's been telling your business, you need to get this ordered, and has to scramble, because I've been in that position every year. Scramble.
So that's mostly like, those are like the problems as well in the problems with ESG, that people are like excited about it. They want to do something, but end of the day, they put it like as the last thing to do. Right?
And the saddest stat I heard about sort of ESG, where it's going off the rails, I think, is that I think close to 40, if not 50% of the sustainability budget's going on reporting. So you're not actually doing anything. You're just reporting. So, and that's what I'm trying to disrupt. I'm saying, hey, hold on. There's so many different frameworks. I'm sorry, I introduced another framework called the Triple C, but that's the simple one: confidence, commitment, and consistency. But there are hundreds of frameworks that cost a lot of money, take a lot of time, that don't actually really add value, and you're forced to report on them, or you just end up spending all the time in legals and making sure you can say this and not say that, and getting verification of your carbon number when you actually the money that you need to get audited on your carbon could actually go on to put solar panels on the roof, and would be much more better, that sort of stuff, which is we've got to break that circle of just the reporting and get more doing, and that's really what I wrote the book for. So the idea is that you can read the book in 3 or 4 hours, hopefully in a weekend, ask questions Monday, Tuesday, maybe make a change on Friday in your business. You just get stuff done quicker and get going. So you don't need to procrastinate. It's all there. You can make a start and have some guidance, and hopefully it was just designed as that business book to pick up and run with.
Nice. I love that. So it is really a business book about, the world is changing. Customers are asking for you to be ESG. So just for the listeners, it's ESG is environmental, social governance. Some people might know it, others won't. So I just want to clarify that. So it's like, the customers want it, politics want it. Like in Europe, like you could still be like, I'm not going to care about environmental things, but we had the Green Deal is happening. It's like politics are going to force it upon you. So why not use it as an advantage to your competitors? So it's like, it's all there. Like, you might still have a bit of time, but not much. Just to give an example, in 2025, all company cars in Europe or in large parts of Europe have to be electric. And still 90% of the cars are not electrics, and people are not like aware, like they think you still have time, but we're end of the year. It's of 2024. It's going to be there very fast. So companies have to be prepared for that change that is like coming. And even if they don't care about the governance, it's also like climate change is going to have an impact on your business. So that's another reason to do it. Now let's dive a bit deeper into some of the strategies that companies can apply. I'm curious to know where you can go from, it's just a checkbox that we need to do, to, how can I actually integrate it and make it an asset in my business?
The key lesson I learned there is, where does your money come from in your business? And then who are your customers? So, and what do they want? And what are you supplying them? So very early in my career, because I had a sales background, I was quite interested in, why do people buy and how do they buy, and what makes our product that good. And when I was working at Fujitsu, it's a large global IT company, very fortunate being a Japanese, they had a long-standing ethos of environmental protection, sustainability. And we're trying to sell data center space or laptops and big managed services, deals worth tens, hundreds of millions of dollars. But what are we doing? We're selling to all the larger companies, and they all have sustainability targets. And then I started working with the sales team to say, well, how do we differentiate ourselves? Well, we're up against these other big guys. Well, I said, well, look, let's put the Fujitsu angle there. We've got a sustainability strategy. We've got these targets. If we work together with this company, we can help reduce their emissions. I can do the footprinting analysis of moving to our data center, and call that out, and then actually let's talk to the head of IT, the CIO, and I know the chief sustainability officer. Let's go have a chat to them and bring the two. In many cases, I brought those two together in the company that we're trying to pitch for, and they're going, yeah, the head of sustainability's got this, carbon emission target. The CIO is going, oh, yeah, we're a large portion of these emissions, so let's work together on this, and we could help sort of meld that deal and sort of be different against the other competitors, because if you come with us, we'll help you do that and map that and manage that and call it out for your sustainability targets. And the CIO gets a good pat on the back because he or she's helped support the corporate environmental targets while also working with us. So I learned very early on that almost every client I've worked with, I try to talk to their key customers, and you get gold every time. And I was just in one meeting just last week where I invited the head of sales for our client I was working for and the chief operation officer, and I interviewed them at a materiality assessment. They just listened in, and they just got some great insights into where their product development needs to go. And we come up with some ideas already, just talking, well, let's catch up every 3 to 6 months and talk about innovation and collaboration together,
Yes.
And that just comes from that. And that's where the beauty of the subject of sustainability. You can have a conversation with anyone in the business, and you can find, if you know what you do, you can find that angle that helps them, whether it's the head of finance, HR, operations, sales, of course, marketing. There's all the specific angle, and I talk about it a little bit in the book and what the roles of each different sort of area of the large business can be and their touch points to sustainability. So there's some really good insights there about how you can navigate there, and that's where I see the strategies that are most successful in sustainability are customer centric.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's where the longevity lasts, because you're linked to revenue. You're not a cost. You're a value creation in a business. So that's the key.
This podcast is brought to you by the Garden of Your Dreams Masterclass. Are you struggling with finding the right tools and tricks for your garden? Are you lacking the confidence to be a self-sufficient gardener? Do you sometimes get overwhelmed by the lack of knowledge and time you have to actually do gardening? Then the Garden of Your Dreams Masterclass is for you. Nice. I love that. I think it's important to stress that out. Like, okay, you could try and find a way like to do something that's good for the environment, maybe inside the company, plant a couple of trees. That's all good, right?
Yeah.
But how are you going to create value for your customers? You ask them hey, what are we doing here? And how can we improve it for you? And how can this become an asset? Like I mentioned before, could you give a specific example, maybe a case study where you applied that strategy and what the results were?
Yeah, look, and it's an open case study. It was a few years ago, but with Australia Post in here in Australia, we're looking for a new data center provider hosting, and I was working for Fujitsu at the time. And what we had at Fujitsu, we had the first energy efficiency rated data center. And we're going out with a portfolio. So we went ahead of the game. It took a lot of challenges to get through. It was a large investment, but I managed to sell the business case internally. And what he did was I helped the Australia Post salespeople win the contract hosting for the data centers. And during that process, I was heavily involved in the bid, worked with their head of environment at Australia Post and also the IT people. And that helped win the deal, and they became a case study, calling that out, saying one of the key criteria of us selecting you, obviously, of course, you did all the data center things right, you got the right security, it all works and stuff, was the environmental aspects and the fact you had this energy efficiency rating, which aligned to our corporate ethos and goals of that. So that was a significant, amount of revenue and for the business, and that's there's countless of those sort of examples I've got.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. It just reminded me also that now these days, investors are also starting to be more picky on. I know of an ETF that's like sustainability screened. And I've seen in the stock market that has actually been trading way higher than all of the other ETFs. So there's something to say that people that are investing are also like, okay, I want to
Yeah.
invest in something, I have the money, but I don't just want to invest it in an oil company or something
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
negative for the environment.
Yeah.
I want to put it, I want to put my money where there's going to be a good impact for the environment.
Yeah.
Is that something you have experience with, or
Yeah.
how do you
Yeah.
see that?
I've just picked up some work around that specific question. And what it is the thing of financed emissions. So the banking sector is now getting scrutinized by, okay, you have this lending book portfolio. During that portfolio, what's the emissions of that you're financing? So and they've got to pivot, they've got to move. So they might be heavily indexed in oil and gas stocks or mining stocks and investments, and they will start coming up on the red in some sectors, right? When they do that analysis, so they've got to go, well, we've got to move some of that money towards greener stocks or less finance emissions. So
Mhm.
what we're seeing is the questions being asked, and even I worked at when I was previously working at Fonterra, they got a sustainable finance framework up as a future insurance policy for cost of capital. They didn't need any capital, but they might need some in the future, but they didn't want to miss out on green funds or green bonds, which might have lower basis points for funding. Similar to
Yep.
any business, if you're a supplier, the banks will be starting asking questions. I know here in Australia and New Zealand they are of even medium-sized businesses. What do you currently do? What's your emissions and stuff? Questions are going to start
Yeah,
coming
yeah,
up, and if you're a business that has that and doesn't have your carbon footprint sorted out or doesn't have a climate roadmap, you might miss out on the opportunity to become part of these other funds or get lower cost of capital, or even at some instances might not be able to get any capital.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
think that's a huge, that's a really huge important thing to look out for businesses that are starting out or they're growing, and
yeah.
they're gonna need capital at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
So if you're ahead of the game and you've sorted out, like from the beginning, you've incorporated it into your business,
Yeah.
you'll be able to attract so much more different investments from different areas. We actually, for example, we're working on a new office building with a huge green roof.
Yep.
I'm designing the
Oh,
whole
oh,
the whole
nice.
green roof.
Yeah.
It's going to be an amazing project. They're starting to build next year, and yeah, it was really about like how can we hit all the targets so
Yeah.
that because it's a big building, they wanted to attract different investors,
Yeah.
and yeah, the whole green space was part of that concept.
Yeah.
So it's completely LEED certified.
Yeah.
We're gonna like, I love this. We had an external company coming in to actually give me some advice on like how can we improve the biodiversity even. So they said like you should put up some bird houses. There's some other things
Yeah.
like even the plants that you select. So
Yeah.
I was even though this is already part of my business, it was fun to work with them
Yeah. Yeah.
and find more solutions for that specific case. So a building that is an office becomes a green spot,
Yeah.
and it's just more amazing for people that are going to work in
Yeah.
that environment. Even so, with my client, we thought, okay, this green environment is becoming like, how do you still want to get people to come to the office,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It's like people are home office saying they have high standards these days.
Yeah.
If you still want to get them to come to the office, now if you have an amazing green space where you can have meetings outside, where you can have an amazing lunch break, there's birds everywhere, then that's a big asset for a company to
Oh,
attract people to come to your
yeah.
office.
Yeah, definitely. And so good for, well-being and, reducing stress and everything else.
Yep.
It's yeah, so
And
good.
it's quite innovative. We're actually using
Mm.
a roof system where we have underground, under the green roof, we're creating an artificial ground table with water. So we
Yeah.
don't like
Wow.
the water with the capillary force, it'll go from the bottom, it'll go up into the
Yeah.
soil.
Yeah.
So we don't need irrigation from the top, which is like a new
Oh,
innovation that's
yeah,
been
cool.
uh, made in the Netherlands only 2 years ago. So that
Yeah.
also drastically reduces the water consumption
Yeah.
for irrigating. So it's pretty cool to see all those innovations coming in.
Yeah.
So are you in the construction industry, development space? Is that something you're working in as well?
Yeah. No, I've just had a partner joining the business in the next just in the new year, who comes from 30 years
Nice.
of construction business, head of
Oh,
sustainability for one of the largest constructions, and she's just amazing. And yeah, looking forward to working with her, learning off her, and some of the work she's been doing around green concrete, biofuels for diesel gensets,
Oh my
and
God, well,
standby
you have
power,
to.
stuff like
I
that,
just want to
hydrogen stuff. Yeah,
put the green concrete
yeah,
in the one of the podcast interviews before this one.
yeah,
I interviewed a gentleman from the US who's making biochar, which
yeah.
is bio. Have you heard of biochar?
Yes, yes, yeah,
So you can go and listen to that episode. But
yeah,
he says he wants to. You can actually mix it in concrete,
yeah,
and that will like drastically reduce the carbon footprint of concrete, and it will improve the insulation of concrete. So
yeah, yeah,
a lot of cool stuff happening there as well. So I'm
yeah,
happy to talk or to
yeah,
make an
yeah,
introduction
yeah,
with him as well. So yeah, let's talk a bit more about the future, the strategy of your business. Where
yeah.
do you see things going, and what's the main focus for 2025 to 2030?
Yeah, yeah, no, great question. Going from a solo me to a expanded team, we just had a launch just last week where I'm taking on 2 senior partners and some
Wow,
associates are joining the team in the new year.
that's
And
incredible! Congratulations, that's always
thank you.
exciting, right?
Thank you. Yeah, and we're here to really disrupt the way sustainability consulting is delivered and done. I've been testing for the last 2 years the option of the virtual chief sustainability officer, especially for the middle tier market, which doesn't have a sustainability team but has those pressures we spoke about, maybe with
Mhm.
finance or a customer, and sometimes
Yep.
regulatory pressure. And not sure, and I know they need to hire a sustainability person, but not sure how to go about that. So what I've already done with, I've got 3 clients I've been working with now where I've gone in and set up the structure, followed the framework in the book, educated the board and executive, helped them set their first climate target, waste targets, social, set up the governance framework and reporting working groups, and then help them hire that person. And I step back more, and I'm coaching that person into the role with their first executive meetings and board meetings, and then stay on as that sort of trusted advisor in less capacity. But there's always something
Nice.
new coming at them. So one client I've just had to help them design their circular economy strategy, or there's a scope 3 client engagement part they need help with, working with suppliers or customers. So I'm generally called in as a trusted advisor, but I help set up the BAU part of the sustainability bit and make sure the strategy just gets off on the right foot.
Nice.
And
What is BAU?
business as usual. Sorry, yeah.
Okay.
So there's certain cadence that you need on reporting and making sure the data comes through, and that's
Yeah.
really good sort of project management of sustainability once the strategy's set to make sure
Yes.
the execution happens. And then I'm more keeping the lens out to the next horizon and making sure there's new regulation coming, or these are sort of the signals as what's happening over in your way in the EU. This might have implications for your industry here. This is what the other competitors are doing. So I'm kind of always scanning that sort of second and third horizon of that,
Nice.
trying to keep my clients more prepared.
Nice. So you're focusing on the middle-sized businesses.
Ideally, but
That's
I'm still doing tactical support for larger companies as when they need it. But I do enjoy the mid-sized company because it's you're talking straight to the owner or the CFO or CEO. You're not in the other layers, which I've sort of found it does create some problems, but it's challenges. But you can get things done generally quicker as well.
yeah, that's it. With large corporations and boards and all these
Yeah,
things, I
yeah,
had some experience there that it can
yeah.
be a time, or it
It
can
can be,
take.
yeah,
It can
yeah, but
take.
it can be hugely rewarding when you get it right because you've just
Oh yeah,
moved this
then you
massive
can
ship
move
in the right
fast
direction.
and have
Yeah,
huge
yeah,
impact. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
It goes both ways.
yeah.
Nice. So, what are you most excited about for your business in the next again in the next 5 years?
The next 5 years is our corner of the world in Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific has got some unique challenges, but I look forward to building a really nice business, but being able to help. My heart lies in the Pacific Islands. I'm working with the Tongan government on some things, helping them be adapting with climate change, and actually some of the proceeds of the royalties of the book are going to my projects there. Want to be working pro bono for them. So in the next 5 years,
Nice.
I really want to it's about making an impact. I've probably only got, thinking of 10 or 15 really good career years left that I really want to make an impact and make a difference. Yes, I want to provide for my family, but I think I've got a 20 plus years of experience that it's time to actually start really shifting the dial and working with people that want to shift the dial with me. So that's exciting. I've got those people on board. and then now it's working with those clients that want to move fast and get stuff done.
Nice. I love that. Let's talk. I think you have well over 10 to 15 years of
Oh yeah,
business
yes.
ahead of you.
Oh, but I want to retire, maybe on a beach somewhere, write another book, maybe. Yes.
But
Yeah.
talk a bit more about your passion for these islands in the Pacific, Tongan, and what other groups are there?
Oh yeah. Well, one of my clients, I could talk about my clients. The Tanoa Hotel Group has hotels in Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga, and
Yes.
probably my favorite client to visit as a destination, of course.
I agree.
But they have unique challenges, especially in
Are you
Tonga.
surfing?
I don't surf. I do
Ah,
scuba dive, so I do love
okay,
diving.
but
I'm
still,
not a surfer. Yeah,
that's
yeah,
probably beautiful
yeah,
wildlife.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Fiji, Samoa, all great diving spots. Amazing.
Wow.
But yeah, no, not a great surfer. Wouldn't trust myself. Can get up, but that's about it.
I just think every Australian
Yeah, yeah,
every Australian is a surfer, but I'm clearly wrong.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm especially my heart's probably in Tonga more because last year's COP, I was part of their delegation in Dubai, trying to help them with some strategic advice, and then I've helped design their circular economy plan for the country,
Nice.
and trying to get funding for that, and working with the local MP who's got the landfill in his constituency, and you just see, the landfills. I see it as a mini microcosm of the world because there's no recycling, no infrastructure there to help. Everything just ends up chucked in there, and they're running out of space. You know,
Oh yeah.
so and it's all the products are there. All the global brands are in that, and just going, man, we've got to do something here. And I think it's relatively easy because you have a captured population, small island, some good regulation, some right investment. You can actually create the world's first circular country, and that's my vision to help them try to do that. So, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I think you can do
yeah,
it faster than you imagine.
yeah,
Again, bringing it back to for the organic waste, these biochar installations
yeah,
are really interesting. I think we
yeah,
should definitely set
yeah,
up a meeting around
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And then even the plastic, when plastic waste
yeah,
is taken care of in the right way, it becomes a value
yeah,
creation
yeah,
for the population. Even if
yeah,
they've
yeah,
like they, Germany is a great example for that. In Germany, the
yeah,
plastic bottles that you use, they all have a value of like 50 euro
yeah,
cents
yeah,
or sometimes a euro. So it's quite high. And then you have
yeah,
these machines where you
yeah, the vending,
bring
yeah,
them back in.
yeah,
So that's working quite well. But even if you don't want to go like very techy, there's other
yeah,
solutions to reuse the plastics.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that's a great idea. Um, and then linked to all of these visions, the goals, what do you see as like the biggest challenges that are going to arise or that are currently arising in your business?
Yeah, and in sustainability in general, there's a lack of experienced professionals to do that. So, and there's a lot being asked of those that are already there. So there's a capability gap that we need to quickly fill, and get experience up. The other biggest challenge I did allude to before is that companies and sustainability people end up just reporting and not doing, and
That's great. They
that's
spend a lot of money on some expensive report that they can publish,
yeah,
and then it just
or
stays
they
there.
need to get it assured and all that stuff. And then what you see in the risk is you've got a sustainability team. There's more things coming at them, and they're just getting diluted and disillusioned with their job, and then will end up like me being burnt out at certain stages of your career and just going, you're done. So it's kind of making sure that the good people stay in sustainability and don't get overloaded. And companies actually have to realize that you can't, just because you've got a small sustainability team, you just can't keep piling stuff on them. Finance, marketing, HR, operations, all those teams need to step up. And that's what I talk about in the book. You need a sort of diverse portfolio of sustainability responsibility and projects happening across the business, not just on the shoulders of head of sustainability or environment person or whoever. So that's the biggest challenge I see is making sure companies, especially medium to large companies, have the governance structure right and reporting and responsibilities, not just reliant on one small team to do everything. So that's the key.
Yeah, and can you talk a bit more about the challenge about the experienced professionals within the industry?
Yeah,
What do you see as the big
the
problem there?
biggest there's a lot of and I don't want to come across sounding so arrogant, but it's probably will. But there's a lot of overnight experts that have just suddenly done one or two projects and running out now an ESG expert, and they've popped up everywhere. And it's making sure that they do the right thing and they actually get some accreditation or spend some right time in doing things. I'm encouraged by going to a conference, say in New Zealand. There was only 50 people when I first went to this conference. When I went there 3 months ago, year 9, 10 of that version of that conference is 600 people. So that's great. That's amazing. There's a lot of interest in all that, but want to make sure that those people have the right ground and the right foundations to do things and not just run off and create havoc and so forth. So that's why one of the reasons why I wrote the book too. There's certain ways you can do things effectively and do that. So, and I do really think universities are great, but there's a gap in the short courses done, delivered well, and on the job training, which is what I'm working on with my book. I'm actually launching next year a worksheet and courses. So you actually learn by doing in your organization. So we mentor you. So we don't just consult for you. We actually work with you to do your first carbon footprint, and you have the tools. So you do it year 2. We might review you in year 2 and year 3, but we'll keep you abreast of all the new stuff. But you've got to make sure you get that right grounding. So teaching people to fish in sustainability, not just giving them food, is the key, I think.
I like that. Yeah, because I think it's there might have been there's a paradigm shift that is happening, and it's necessary to keep happening. Is like, okay, companies are like, okay, we need to do something that about sustainability, social aspects, which is good. So there's the awareness already, and then they're like, okay, we're just going to contact somebody to get it done for us.
Yeah.
And then it's like, again, that checklist, you put it somewhere, and that's the last thing. Like people now in December, they'll be like, oh shit, we still have to like do something here.
Yes. Yep.
So how do we change that so it becomes like in part of the day-to-day business? Like, we can do something that's good for the environment because it's going to bring us more customers, and we're going to comply to the policies. We're going to attract more investors. Like that kind of work, I think, is what's the biggest challenges, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Nice. All right. Well, Lee, I'm very excited that you've come onto the show. I think there's something really interesting happening in the world that we can see clearly now how we can actually do good for the environment and turn that into a business asset, into amazing future-proof businesses. I've been in contact with quite a lot, and there's several people coming on here on the podcast, so that's exciting. So thank you for coming on here. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we start wrapping up? Maybe an inspiration to people that want to start out in the industry?
Yeah, one key question that I talk about in the book, and maybe just ask yourself this question, and it's a really good one I use in materiality assessments when I talk about, what matters most to your business. And just ask yourself this question: if your business did not exist, would the world, environment, or society be better or worse off? So really think about that. Would the world really matter if your business just wasn't there? And the answer to that question, I often greet it with silence, especially when you're asking board members. They just get really silent, or the CEOs. But have a think about that. Write down a few things. But in that is some of the answers to some of your strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities I generally find out. So, have a think about that.
I think that's a great question, because then with that question, you tap into the legacy building that for a lot of entrepreneurs, they've worked a lot, they've done a lot, they want to build a legacy. And with that question, when you get the right answers and you're clearly supporting them to find the right answers to that question, it becomes a project to build a legacy for many generations to come.
Yeah,
that's the true sustainability, or even beyond sustainability, in my opinion. Which is the regenerative approach. So thank you very much for explaining that, Lee. When people want to reach out to you, they're in business, they want to start working on the topics we discussed today, how can they best reach out to you?
Look, there's a website. My author website is just leestewart.com.au. So leestewart.com.au. Corporate website's ESG strategy, or one word.com.au. The book's on Amazon. Feel free to please buy it and give me a review if you like it.
Nice.
And happy to connect and chat with anyone that wants to learn a bit more.
All right, awesome. And you're also on social media, mostly LinkedIn or other
mostly
platforms?
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn's the main one. You can get hold of me. Yeah, just look me up
Nice.
on LinkedIn. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. We'll put all that into the show
Yeah,
notes. So
yeah,
thanks again, Lee. Thank you for coming on. It was an amazing episode. I
awesome.
hope to get you back in the next 5 years to talk about an update what's been
Oh, for
happening.
sure. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Cheers.
All right. Bye-bye.